Okay, so really quick. So I saw there was a comment on the video conversation communication video that inspired both Brian and I think it was Scott that made the comment and Brian and me to and this sparked this want to make this quick video. Okay, so how do I best express game's intent? And I talk about this all the time. What is the game's intent? And I think the problem is most readers, most players don't recognize it when they're reading the rules and when they're preparing their character, right? But through their conversation with the players at the table between sessions or before sessions or after sessions, it's clear that they get the intent, whether they're aware of it or not. And so I guess the best way to express what I mean by why it matters if you want to create a role-playing space or you want to create a game space is the the obvious opposite, which is unintended consequences. So whether they were aware with, I'll use, and again, I will always use old D&D or D20 as an example because in my opinion, it has set the largest sample size for 50 years in our gaming culture. And it is obvious and most people recognize it, whether they're fans of it or they're not fans of it. They recognize this. And fans of it will recognize it and say, yep, that's why I play, and yep, that's the game, and yep, I accept that. And then there are those who will say that's exactly why I won't play that game. That's why I don't that game doesn't give me what I want or whatever. Forget genre, fantasy versus Star Wars versus gangbusters versus forget genre. We're talking about the consequences. So, what is the intention, whether we like it or not, of say a D&D? The fact that we have a high score, we have a scoring mechanism. That scoring mechanism is experience points, and that experience points comes from collecting treasure, killing monsters. What is the unintended consequences of that? Well, it's not just survival. It is actually collecting a resource, experience points that are going to allow me to improve so I can go further, do more damage, win more, right? And despite every game saying this is not about winning or losing, invariably when we play games, we know what game means. Tic-tac-toe. I'm either going to win it, lose it, or most likely with tic-tac-toe, we all are smart enough to know how to make sure we don't lose. We can't win, but damn it, I will never lose a game of tic-tac-toe. Never happen. So that's where Nash's equilibrium about the idea of what is a game and what is not a game. Well, technically, I've said it a million times, role-playing games are not games. They have game elements like gambling with dice rolls, measuring probabilities, going up against a challenge. But it's not a true game in the sense that that's four people trying to win the pot of gold, and they all know the rules, and they all have to play by the rules, and we all have the fair chance to achieve that. Or playing against somebody where again we know the rules, et cetera, et cetera. The GM technically is outside that fairness realm, right? They know the hidden secrets. They can cheat. They can quantum ogre. They can fudge dice rolls, whatever. But the players are inevitably going to do what the game says it's doing. You are going to roll 6 attributes randomly and apply them. And then you're going to look to see where you get benefits or negatives. And then you're going to find a class that best takes advantage of your bonuses. Oh, wisdom 18, that's a plus 15% experience point high score kick. And that's going to make your character level up quicker over the course of his career. So their longevity and so they can survive. We don't even talk about character. We talk about game elements. So everything about it is all about the game, right? How we create it, what it means, why it's positive to make my why would I make an 18 wisdom character cleric? Because I can level up faster, I can get stronger, I can survive, I can become a badass, whatever. We aren't even talking about character. There's no reference to actual role playing, right? So if I want my game to be about embracing the narrative first, then we have to make the mechanics about the narrative. We have to make the mechanics about being characters in a narrative. Now, that narrative can be emergent, or it could be, I guess, preordained as you're a story. You are going to do this thing, and now you're trying to change those narrative plot points with a roll of the dice. I mean, you could create a role playing game that says, this is the introductory act one. And at the plot point in which we're going to decide whether this story goes right or goes left, everybody in the party must make a roll. And if 75% of the party members succeed at their roll, then the plot point will go A, or if you all fail, the plot point will go B, and then we move down here to B, and we take in that story, and then we make rolls to change the narrative direction. I don't want to do that. I don't think there's a role-playing game on the market that does that, because that's not what role-playing is. But my point is, I could write a role-playing game that demands it's about character, and then everybody sitting at the table votes on whether you were in character or not. And if I get the votes, right, and I think there are like games like Fiasco, you're kind of trusting the other players at the table believe you or don't believe you, right? So if we're talking about games being games with gamey elements like combat, driving the car, winning the fist fight, picking the lock, leaping the chasm, outsmarting the cop, whatever the case may be, those elements are going to be inherent in a player to win, right? Although the actual emergent story very often is more fun and more interesting and more entertaining from failure. But players inherently want to win. They inherently want to be successful, right? Which is why I say don't play toward a goal. Don't play toward a story's end, right? Play. And the story emerges. And oh, by the way, we may not even know the goal, right? We know that we don't want to, we know we have a mission. And our mission is to investigate a creature in the woods. And we've been told identify and liberate, or identify and neutralize, right? Identify and capture, right? Then we have, as a human being, I've been given a mission. So I can assume as a character in that scenario, I've been given a mission. This is what we're supposed to do. But the emergent story out of that is it's eaten 3 of my mates, and I'm now just trying to get the hell out of the forest alive, so I can at least express back to my commanders that this fucking thing ate 3 of my platoon mates, and that becomes the story. That became the emergent story, right? But I was adhering to a character on a mission told by Captain Joe. Go neutralize, capture, kill, whatever, but identify this thing. What is it? And well, it didn't go that way, right? It went the other way. But it could also be we find it, we identify it, we neutralize it, and we go back to tell our tale, and we were incredibly successful. The story is what the story is, right? But role playing, how am I doing that? Is it because, for me, is the game saying you need to defeat the creature to win? I'm going to arm up. I'm going to optimize my character build for the best possible success. And one game I know for a fact creates this environment, and it is the D20 formula. It is old D&D Pathfinder. It creates this formula, and partially because this formula says score points, get stronger, live longer, score more points, get stronger, live longer. Yeah, right. And so there is this unintended consequence of that particular DNA, the bedrock foundation, right? That started many of us on this path. Now, I've said it before, I want to be a character who's thinking and responding from the narrative. It means more to me from the character. It means more to me what Brian says about the creature, and than it does me measuring, okay, page 64, I know this creature has 16 hit points. There's 4 of us. Do the math, guys. We're going to beat it. One of us may die, but we're going to beat it. That's gamey, and that's not why I'm here. I don't want to know the hit points of the creature. I don't want to know that it's immune to magic, it's immune to standard weapons, right? I want to find that out as I play. Even if I've done this so much, I know, oh, right, it's a ghoul. It's immune to, right, or whatever. Maybe a ghoul isn't, but I can't remember, but it's immune to non-magical weapons, whatever. And then I'm making all my decisions about that before the combat's even started. None of us in this group have magical weapons, guys. We got to run. which is what happens, right? Everybody debates this flee, 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 right? Instead of playing the first round of combat, learning that you can't harm it, then as characters getting out of the situation, you would ask us to jeopardize not being able to escape the combat if there's no option to flee once combat's engaged, to not say our characters would or would not know that this creature needs magic. So then we start the meta process of the thing, right? Now it's metagaming, and to keep the party alive, one of us has to say, dudes, we don't have any magic weapons. I can say that in character. Oh, Lord, Sir Vincent, I have heard tales of these creatures. None of us have the equipment to face it. Run away, right? And maybe that's good enough, right? So unintended consequences probably best is the best way to express why, because I think some games it's hard to see what the intention is. We created Dark Age of Man with intent. We hope that we've expressed it, but that's not to say people won't miss it. It's too subtle, or it's not glaring enough, or whatever. So people might miss the intent of Dark Age of Man. The fact that it lacks tactical optimization, so to speak, and the fact that what little optimization it allows you, it tells you these are the max numbers you can get to. So somebody very quickly can say, wow, I'm already at 2. If I can just score 2 more reputation points, I can get my body up to 4, and I'll be maxed out of body. So at least I know I am what I claim I am. I'm a badass swordsman in Dredgewater, right? But that's all you're going to be, and it's a minor part of the game, right? But at least when you get into combat, you know you are the best possible swordsman you can be, right? But that doesn't give your swordsman a dominant position in game. But I can also achieve that with spirit of 4, mind of 4, prestige of 4. But how I'm going to deal with the vampire with a prestige of 4 in Dark Age of Man, you're not going to do it through combat. You're going to have to do it through manipulating the vampire relevant to society, right? I'm going to have to defeat the vampire by using prestige to either rally an army to go get the vampire, or actually, if we're talking about a Count Dracula, I might use my prestige to influence the vampire toward societal ends, and we'll live with the fact that Count Dracula's moved into the neighborhood, but maybe I've put enough pressure on him societally that he'll play by the rules, right? And he'll have to suck the blood of a newborn calf, right? And I do it through social a social power that my character has with prestige, because I can't beat it in a hand-to-hand combat using prestige. But do we explicitly say this in Dark Age of Man? No. Hopefully, people reading with reading comprehension and thinking about what prestige means in our game, or mind means in our game, or spirit means in our game, or body means in our game, influences how they want to go about being a character and affect change on the world. So yes, I'm a prestige 3, man. I want to get to 4. What does that mean? Well, that means I'm now at the highest level I can be, and I can use this, but I have to use it narratively through what prestige means culturally. So why is Dark Age of Man what it is? Why do we pick the Dark Ages? Why do we pick the Middle Ages? Why do we pick this culture? Because there is such a thing as the peasant class, and there is such a thing as the noble class, and there is such a thing as having prestige. You could still be a made man and have prestige as you commanded armies successfully for the king, but you're not of noble birth, right? And so we needed those kind of hierarchical class structures, and we needed prestige to make that work, and we needed that setting to make prestige a valuable thing, but we also needed prestige to allow people to play at a different level, right? Not just the sword wielder, the magic caster, the prayer, right? The manipulator, the thief, right? But do we explicitly lay this stuff out? No, you hope the intent comes through the reading of the rules, the acknowledgement of what we're asking you to do as players and GMs, and through some descriptive example text. Will people come to the table and think that they're playing a different version of D&D? Yeah, and they may or may not be surprised by how the GM presents the game and find themselves out, oh, wait, I can just win. No, no, you still got to make some dice rolls, but you're not going to necessarily be able to optimize your character for success, especially in our game where we suggest the DV value is constantly in flux, right? You can be a great swordsman, but that DV value is going to go up or down based on situation, circumstances, some in your control, some out of your control, some based on your last die roll, some based on a failed party mate, right? Uh, in the game with Sam, Sam's character failed the roll. It was a catastrophic failure by Sam's character, but it actually affected Dell, right? And that's how we can keep it in narrative space. So it's not just about Dell being so good or so powerful that he becomes unaffected by the rest of the game. Sam, it's all happening to everybody at the same time. Sam's failure can be represented relevant to Dell's character situation. And this hopefully is what Dark Age of Man ultimately intends and imparts. But we can't always know the unintended consequences or intent that we didn't realize we did not we didn't realize people would get out of it for good or ill, right? Um, but yes, I'm a firm believer. I want people to play characters, and I want them to play from the narrative position, right? When somebody tells me that we're playing Call of Cthulhu and you're an investigator investigating this thing, and it turns out you witnessed some shit you didn't want to see, and there's a sanity effect upon that. I'm gonna due diligence. I'm gonna play that, recognizing that the first rule should be my adherence to the fiction, right? That's really rule one for role play. Adherence to the fiction first. In other words, play your character, and at least, even if you aren't moved by the description of the beast by your GM, that you know that this game is about the horror of the beast. And it is first rule number one that you at least adhere to what your character would feel about the beast, even if your GM is boring, bad at describing, or actually cracks you up, makes you laugh. Well, your character is in a different situation. And I want, hopefully, they'll adhere to the narrative of the fiction. And then, of course, there's always going to be gamey elements because it's a game. Somehow, some way, it's a game, at least in the sense that we're dropping dice, we're rolling dice, we're gambling that we're going to succeed at a sanity check or succeed at talking to the German in broken German, or you know, succeed at getting directions from a very shy, um, apprehensive stranger. And so some games, by the nature of them being capable of optimizing your character, becomes part of the character. And this is what Brian eloquently states in his comment. I am a badass, and I'm going to play a character that knows he's a badass, right? And I'm going to play accordingly. I'm not going to play a badass swordsman that's scared of the average soldier in the street. And so I think this also informs our role play, right? My optimization of my badass in D&D 5th edition can also be role played in such a way. And I can adhere to my character and role play from that perspective of understanding I am a well-trained badass. Ask yourself if you've ever watched boxers, right? The champion of the world in a press conference with the runner-up, with the contender, right? Both these guys know they've already beaten 24 grown men. They've already beaten other professionals in fisticuffs. I've already knocked out 19 of my 24 opponents. I'm a badass, and I deserve a shot at the title. And of course, the heavyweight champ's going, I'm 40-2, and I've knocked out 38 people. Bring it on, kid. They are living in a space in which they're very fully aware they're optimized. But does that affect them when it comes to drinking and driving in a bust, or getting arrested for assaulting their girlfriend? Or no. So if you want to challenge the badass in those games, you hit them with something that isn't about defeating the dragon, because, well, they got the dragon thing down, right? So these are the things that are intended. So if you tell me your game is about encountering creatures in which we're going to use magic or weapons to defeat creatures, I am, and that most of the mechanics lay there. I am going to optimize my character for success in those situations, or I wouldn't be a monster hunter. If you tell me the game is about hacking computers and hacking devices, and there's going to be 50% of the devices in this game will be command-based DOS prompt things, and I have the skill of DOS prompt languages. I'm going to put a lot of my skill points knowing that 50% of the challenges I may face in the game will involve DOS prompt hacking. Then I'm going to put a lot of skill numbers in DOS prompt hacking. If, like Drudenfuse, excuse me if I mispronounce that, suggests with her game, which I have yet to see, suggests that it's never about competency, it's about characters in a fiction. I would love to see mechanically how you enforce that, because we have to have challenges and we have to have levels of competency to embrace challenges. Unless the game is never about the challenge, it's about the lead up to the challenge or the consequences of the challenge. Because if there is no competency for me to write my own story that I do automatically win the debate with the king, then the GM has to somehow create an environment that says, well, because you automatically win this conversation with the king, because there is no competency check for your ability to persuade the king, then we are telling a story. It becomes group collaborative storytelling and has nothing to do with gambling, risk taking, risk reward. And that's why we need competency in gaming, right? The competency can be about communication. It can be about tricks. It can be about combat. It can be about flying a helicopter. It can be, but without competencies, I'm not certain what we're actually checking. I'm not certain what we're actually doing. Um, because if you just ask me to sit down with four other people and we're going to role play characters, and Jason, who's your character? Well, here's who I am. And they set up a scene and I'm supposed to just play my character based on the GM scene, then I am doing improv acting that we do in school, that we did in drama classes and we did in acting classes and we do as work toward being better at our craft of acting. That's not role play gaming. That is workshopping as improvisational actors. And so there's a fine line between what is acting, what is role playing. Well, it's not a fine line. Acting, you are told what you're going to say, you're told when you're going to say it, and you're told what mark you're going to hit. And your job is to be a Brooklyn guy saying those lines, hitting those marks, and projecting those emotions. I have no freedom. Zero. This was written for me by somebody else, potentially 2,500 years ago, if I'm doing a Greek play. If I'm doing Shakespeare, it was written for me in the 1600s by a human being that doesn't exist anymore, in a time that's archaic. And so I have to do that to be accurate. And how well do I do that to get people to get it and understand it and to feel what I feel as Hamlet, right? But role playing, no, no, no. I am attempting to undertake the engage in the fiction, engage in the descriptive story, engage in the setting, and be honest about how I perceive that character to be, and he should respond to the data that comes in from that perspective, irregardless of whether I know I'm really good with a sword or not. Now, if it's about a duel, and I'm in a tavern and a guy challenges me to a sword fight in a tavern, I've got two ways to respond to that. Dude, you don't want a part of me. You don't want this to go down. Or, okay, don't say I didn't warn you. Let's go outside. Right. And then it's about the sword fight. And I'm probably going to act accordingly. If I already know I'm a great sword fighter and I know I have the 85 percentile skill in sword fighting, um, I'm going to imbue into that character. Dude, you don't want to fuck with me, right? I'm telling you right now, you probably don't want to fight me with the sword, right? I mean, but hey, I'll oblige. If it's the old Gunsmoke gunfight scene. I'm the fastest man in the West, and you're challenging some guy who's just rode in on a horse. You have no clue who this guy is. And he walks in and he says, dude, you don't, I know you're fast, but you trust me, I've killed 16 men. You don't want to duel with me. I would like to have my whiskey and not kill you right now. So kid, go on about your business, right? That is role playing. And I'm aware of my skill with a handgun. I'm aware of my speed on the draw. And I'm also aware of who my character is. I have not willingly killed 16 people, but damn it, they keep challenging me and I keep having to kill them. So, kid, I'm gonna give you a chance. I'll buy you a whiskey and you pick on the next guy who comes into town because I really don't want to, I really don't want to make, I really don't want to end your life right now, right? And that becomes, that's character, right? That becomes role play. Or I could play the bullying, ego, maniacal gunslinger who says, who wants a fight? I've had a couple of whiskeys, I'm ready to go. But I don't know if we can ever remove the player from the game. I don't think we can ever remove the game from the experience. And I don't think we want to. I don't think that's the conversation at all. But I do believe when we're designing, when we're playing the game, communicating, how do we want to communicate? How do we want to, what kind of space do we want that to look like, feel like for everybody at the party or everybody at the table? But when we're writing and designing a game, how do we want it to communicate it? And what goals are we intending? And if we're not thinking about what this goal, what this does, if we don't recognize the person reading the book, there are two types of guys that read the book. This guy like me who just reads it, literally creates a character, and then is prepared to sit down and be a character and find out. But then there are those guys that I sat with at 5e table the first time I showed up at a local table and I was playing with this wonderful group of people, but they were already looking ahead at where their character, what they were going to do when they were at level 6 and 7. Everything they were doing for level 1 and 2 was in preparation for what their goal was with a big smile on his face. At level 6, I'm taking this. And dude, I'm going to be doing 60, 10 damage every other turn with that spell. And I was like, dude, I haven't even looked at what I can do at level 6 5 because I'm old school. It's like I may not live to be level 2 or 3, so I ain't looking at that. I was shocked to find out how many 5th edition players started their character looking ahead at what they would be doing at level 5, level 7, and level 10. I literally was just saying, hey man, I want to play a dwarf wizard. What do I have? Oh, cool. I've got some stuff I can use all the time. Kind of what are they called? Spells that I can use willy-nilly. And then I've got this like slot of spells. And that's cool. It makes me this thing. Intending to play a dwarf wizard, not intending to play a weapon, right? So again, just being able to look ahead at level 5 in a book informs the player of the goals of the game, right? And so I think this is huge if we're developing and designing a game. Do you want the mechanisms to govern actions? Do you want the mechanisms to govern challenges? Do you want those challenges to be martial combat? Do you want those challenges to be intellectual? Do you want those challenges to be social? Do you want them only to be combat, which is what I argue D20 always was? The only time we ever dropped the dice in D&D was for combat or a saving throw, which was generally a result of an action, or combat. And there were some extraneous rolls the GMs had to make: reaction checks, morale checks, range checks, wandering monster checks, treasure table checks. But the player only ever rolled the dice, ever intended combat, saving throws, thieves checks, which came along later. But even then, I would argue the GM should be making most of your thief checks, as far as I'm concerned. You don't know if you're hiding in shadows. You don't know if you're, you know, you can roll to climb the walls, you can roll to pick the locks, but they're things that you shouldn't be knowing about as a thief. But outside of that, it was only combat, right? Therefore, the gamey part of the game was a war game that I need to optimize if I want my character to survive here, right? However, in old D&D, you had very little choices to optimize. Pathfinder, you have a whole lot of avenues to pursue as you level up. 5th edition, 4th edition, Dragon Age, Fantasy Age, um, you know, um, a tree that you could develop along to know you were going to optimize and be good at. Now, does that have to not conform to who you're playing as a character and role playing in this narrative? Absolutely not. I mean, I had some of my best sessions with Dragon Age, the Age system, with very good role players in a system that was basically three. It was 3 die 8 or 3 die 6. It was D20, but with 3 dice and with stunt charts. But we had amazing characterization, and it was about the descriptive narrative and the characterization in the emergent stories, in the emergent play, or through emergent play. But were they aware that that their sword, their short dagger couldn't penetrate heavy armor? Yeah. Yeah, and they wanted nothing of it, right? They didn't want nothing to do with that. They needed to roll stunts to triple damage to actually wound somebody with heavy armor. So they needed somebody in the party. So again, talking about gaming the game, Dragon Age, you better have non-martial characters in the party, somebody who can do damage with magic. Because when you come across something with armor soak, you're not going to touch it hardly ever. And those become these long combats of 1 damage point and 2 damage points. The game part shows up, the game part takes over. And now we're characters in this grueling sword fight with a creature that soaks 8 points of damage, but my sword only does 2d6. And at some point, we're in this fantastic imaginative combat. But at some point, it becomes this, oh my God, I'm hitting it all the time, but I'm not doing any damage. And it slowly wears you out of the narrative, right? It becomes this chore, right? So these are all things that are unintended consequences of your game design in the role-playing space. So if you want your game to be about characters and about narrative, then you need to have mechanics that support character and support narrative. If not, all of our narrative comes from emergent play, emergent story, which is how 90% of role-playing games are. The narrative comes from the results, and almost everything is going to be centered on the mechanics that they ultimately can't control, and they're going to optimize toward being good at it, right? If I can't pilot the plane in Hollow Earth, I'm going to probably not drop into the pilot seat. However, um, if I know somebody in the party can pilot it, I'm going to defer to them to hop into the pilot seat and land this damn plane, right? Although I might play a character who would drop into the pilot seat and start me pulling on the yoke and have Ivan's character come up, tap me on the shoulder, say, dude, get the hell out of there. I'm the pilot. Oh, okay. And I have to roll out of the pilot seat. But I may have already caused the plane to drop another 1,000 feet in elevation while I was wrestling with the yoke, in a miserably unskilled failed roll. And then Ivan comes back from the back of the plane and says, get the hell out of the seat. I at least have had some experience piloting. And that becomes character, that becomes narrative, that becomes characterization. It becomes this amazing moment. My character is not going to just stand there, watch the plane crash because I don't have any pilot skills. While Ivan's in the back wrestling the Jaguar, right? I'm going to hop into the pilot seat and start yanking on the yoke, right? Meanwhile, after he strangles out the Jaguar, comes to the front, taps me on the shoulder after I've lost us another 1,000 feet in elevation, and he says, "Get the hell out of that seat. I can pilot." Is that not role play, right? The difference was because I wasn't optimized to pilot, I didn't avoid piloting. I propped into that seat because Ivan is otherwise engaged in the toilet, right? Or locked out of the cabin, or locked or chained up to a seat in the back. Who the hell knows what our scenario is, right? And so you do what you do as a character, not as a player, if you can help it, right? But we're all aware that I'm an unskilled pilot. I'm completely unaware that, oh shit, I'm going to drop into the pilot seat and I have zero proficiency in this. It does not change that as a character, I'm going for it, baby, right? So, and I just don't know how many players truly come to the game wanting to be a character first. Um, at least not wanting to adhere to a certain paradigm of characteristics that would inform their play that have nothing to do with the mechanisms. So if I said to you as a game designer, do you want my role play and my characterization of my role play to be indicative of the adherence to the system, then they need to be the primary mechanic, or there needs to be mechanics that force characterization and adherence to role play instead of all of it about combat or shooting or driving or picking locks or whatever. I don't think you need to. I've said it before. I role play Monopoly. I role play. There's nothing to enforce it. There's nothing to make the other three people at the table role play, right? I enjoy role playing. It's fun. I think it's entertaining. It's not For me, it's not about performance. It's just about adhering to a certain personality. I generally will warn people I've never played Monopoly with that, oh, by the way, I'm going to play this, like a CAD. I'm going to play this like a particular kind of person. So they're not shocked that I suddenly am different when the game starts playing, right? They don't go, who the hell is this jackass? Oh, no, no, this isn't me, dude. I'm playing a character in Monopoly because Monopoly is boring as shit, but inevitably I've had to play Monopoly how many times in my life? Well, I prefer to play it from somebody from another perspective because I don't give a shit on whether I win Monopoly or not, but I give a shit on having a good time doing it. And so playing it from a character's perspective, man, I do not invest in municipals, and I land on a municipal power plant. I ain't buying that. I've already made up my mind before the game starts. I am not, dude. I can't stand the filthy rich. I am not buying Park Place no matter what. They don't have to know that. I'm not going to tell them my strategy, but I'm playing a character who thinks that we should burn down the rich. And so I'm going to be buying up the slums and shit, right? Trying to elevate the slums. And I land on Park Place, and people are like, why aren't you buying Park Place? Because my character wouldn't buy Park Place. But am I going to win the game? Probably not, right? So I think it matters on what you enjoy doing when you sit down to play games. Are you about winning? Are you about experiencing the game, socializing, playing a character? It depends. If somebody says we're going to play Monopoly today with real money, everybody count out your $100 bills. I got some tens and twenties, and we're going to play with real money tonight. And whoever's left with the most money, and we're walking. Oh no, I ain't role playing that. I'm playing to take all y'all's money. So I'm gonna play Monopoly with there's real dollars on the table. I'm gonna play Monopoly to win, and I don't give a shit about role playing, right? So I think these things matter. So again, not only what I'm getting when I read it, is it obvious intent? Am I getting it, or is it implied intent? Oh, I've got to collect experience points to get stronger. And then the first thing you do is go look, well, how do I get experience points? Oh, here it is. You collect experience points by defeating creatures and finding treasure and spending treasure. Okay, literally, I've got to kill creatures. I've got to get their treasure, find treasure. Oh, and I've got to turn around and spend it. Flip back to equipment. Okay, there's weapons and there's tools for adventure. What else can I spend my money on? Well, that's it. Well, shit. I mean, I got 10,000 gold pieces. Well, you know what? Can I just buy everything 10 times? And the GM would say, and then what? Well, then I'm going to give it away, right? That becomes a merchant story. My character bought everything in town until there's nothing left, just so I could spend 1,000 gold, and so I could get 1,000 XP. That's what happens. That's the unintended consequences of saying you got to get it, but you got to spend it. But then in the book, there's nothing to spend it on. Well, that's in the expert book. Oh, the expert book, I can start doing what? Oh, retaining. Okay, I can retain people. I can hire professionals. I can have somebody write out spells for me. Oh, and I can start building my own keep. Sweet. Now I can spend that money. And now we got, again, but they're gamey. But still, am I doing those things only because it helps me get stronger so I can now face the dragon? Or am I doing those things because I'm a character who actually wants to build a keep? No, they're building a keep because it says you got to spend the gold, and the only way to spend that much gold is, oh, build a keep. Because once I have the plate mail, once I have the best weapon, once I have a couple of minions carrying my shit for me, and I have a couple of hired henchmen to take damage for me, I can pretty much get into the adventure of the game, right? So obviously this is in the basic, these would be confined to the basic rules. Obviously, I know there are GMs that run epic campaigns with all of this shit going on, and it creates an environment in which you now um, are going to step outside the confines of that book. But most people's engagement of a role-playing game is the main book, is the main character creation, and is what that book says we're going to be doing today or tonight. Now, your GM may come in and slam down a couple of advanced modules and advanced books and say, go ahead and pick a character out of those. And oh, by the way, keeps are available to you right now. You don't have to wait till you're level 9. You can start investing in a keep right now. Oh, you can go ahead and hire henchmen right now. I don't care what your charisma score is. Those are homebrews. And suddenly now it's like, oh shit, I got all this other options. Now I can start thinking about how I game the game that way. But I also can maybe get into a character's headspace to say, oh, I'm going to be this ambitious peasant who's already putting money in the bank toward building his first house because I want to be this kind of ambition peasant. I don't know. But when it comes to the dungeon we're about to go into, it doesn't make any difference. Doesn't matter whatsoever. Once we go into that dungeon, it's about, dude, I have leather armor and a sword and 2 hit points. You know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time worried about my peasant investing in building his first stronghold, even though you've said it's available to me now, because this cat ain't going to live past the first rat. You know what I mean? So the game is the game, and the game creates the player. So every time somebody wants to blame players, I'm going to say, yeah, let's look at that game. Let's look closely at that game, because the player engages the game feeds back the player then ultimately is the product of the game. I don't like high level gaming because I don't like superheroes. I like characters who have to face constant challenge. And I don't want to be dealing with players who don't respect the guards in the city because they know they can kill the guards. I want to play with players who wouldn't touch the guards, not because they can actually destroy them mechanically, but because that's just not what the game's about. But invariably, I have played where there's chaos because you get players who know they're the shit and they just decide they're going to take over this town. And that the game becomes about them killing all these guards and soldiers and shit and taking over the town. And they're having a good time. So do I care as a GM? Don't have to. That becomes their emergent play, their emergent story, the narrative that comes out of that. But I ultimately come away going, wow, who would have thunk they wanted to play Grand Theft Auto D&D? But I've played with more guys that weren't my locals, that weren't friends, that wanted to do Grand Theft D&D. And that I have very little interest in that. Shenanigans, right? That doesn't mean I want to go on your story, but I want relevance. I want my characters to be situated in such a way there's some relevance. I don't care how broad you define that relevance. If you define that relevance, that this game session, gentlemen, there's 4 of you. It's about your characters. But we are sandboxing and we are hex crawling, but it's about your characters. And that means everything's relative to your characters. There's not some big bad over here on the mountain that your little level 1 is supposed to be preoccupied with. We don't give a shit. We give a shit about what's happening to these 4 on their horses right now. Holy shit, this could be epic. And it's just epic because you ran into a couple of kobolds and it became this fucking melee and you got a few things out of it. And we had a few, you know what I mean? And we're not thinking about the big bad over here or chasing the MacGuffin, right? And so emergent play, emergent stories, narrative, right? And I think that can be done with any role-playing game. But there's no doubt players are aware of the game and they're going to be aware of the rules. They're going to be aware of the unintended or the intent, which is score experience points, get better, get stronger, find magic weapons. So, man, now I can have a better chance of, boy, I just got to find magic armor. And you hope that inspires them to go into a dark hole. Maybe I'll find magic armor in here, right? Or maybe I'll find enough money that we can go back to the blacksmith and get that plate mill I saw in the window, right? Right? Or hopefully, it's slightly more interesting than that, which is where other games come from, which is where Dark Age of Man comes from, which is where, dare I say, something like Task Force Raven, right? I'm going to talk about this because we're going to be playing this soon, and because Scott's a part of this conversation. Task Force Raven defines this space. And what is the key to great storytelling? Define the space. I don't care if it's a movie. If the movie says we're going to be in this elevator for 2.5 hours, that's all I get to work with. 6 people trapped in an elevator to tell this tale for 2.5 hours. Yeah, that's boring as shit. Not if it's a look at the psyche of human beings trapped in an elevator and who these people are and what this is about. Breakfast Club. It's a group of kids trapped in a library all day long, right? And yes, they get out and they kind of sojourn around the school for a minute and a half, right? But who would have thought something like Breakfast Club could be an interesting film, right? At least for me, it was as a young person. But you get my point, right? We're trapped on an alien ship. It's us and this giant fucking alien, and that box puts us in a situation in which I truly understand my character's relevance to the situation, right? It is only about us for this ship and that thing and Who am I here, and how are we going to go about getting rid of it or surviving until we get to the moon base 6 and dumping it on the Marines so the Marines can deal with it or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever the emergent story is. But what's important here is something that Task Force Raven defines what space where we are in career, right? What career are we? Who are we? What are we doing here? Why are we doing it? That is defined, which makes us relevant, and we know now what we're doing. What we're going to experience becomes another, that becomes the adventure, that becomes the thing beyond our career, right? I'm suited up, I'm armed up, I know who I am, I know what I'm about. I'm the sniper in this unit. I know what my job is. I'm going to try to put myself in the right position to overwatch my crews. They do what they got to do. Meanwhile, I don't know what challenges are going to arise in relevance to those scenarios, those particular scenarios. But I'm going into Task Force Raven anticipating a certain atmosphere, a certain genre, and a certain thing. If we go in there and we end up playing an entire session in which I'm never my sniper, and my abilities as a warrior are completely irrelevant. I'm going to probably come out of that session going, well, okay, that was a slow crawl, and it was meant for us to develop characters. That's cool, but holy shit, I thought we were going to be dealing with some. I thought we were going to be, as a military squad, dealing with some serious shit here, right? And so I go in with expectations, which are killer, right? Expectations destroy everything, right? But you can't help not. When I read Task Force Raven, dude, I'm in a certain headspace for what I'm hoping to achieve and what I'm going to be and how we're going to go about doing it. And I'm going to embrace that, right? And D&D says, basic D&D, Moldvay says, hey, red book, 3 levels, a handful of weapons, handful of armor, not a lot of magic stuff here to you, available to you here, not a lot of hit points, not a lot of powers. And oh, by the way, you're going to go into a hole with goblins or kobolds or whatever, and good luck, and we all get into a party and we can role play there. We can characterize our characters there. It can be a great role playing where we engage the narrative, we engage the fiction. We're wholly invested in the genre. But when it comes right down to it, I know I got 1 hit point, and I'm not necessarily going, as a human being, I wouldn't know I have 1 hit point, but as a player, boy, I know I got 1 hit point. It's like, the first fucking thing, I'm dead. So how much am I going to engage balls out in this character in a game like D&D with 1 hit point? I'm going to probably make some huge assumptions that this either I'm going to be playing the Torchbearer again in about, that's what's interesting about DCC, right? DCC just says, hey, we're going to embrace what this experience was really like. Make 6 characters, and we're gonna rip everything away except the one final survivor, and now we can start playing with that guy. So it takes like the first 5 sessions of your D&D life, and I should say the first 5 or 6 characters of your D&D life, and jams them into the funnel and says, you're going to experience what we used to experience all the fucking time in 1 session, and we're going to kind of find that character that you're invested in now and it's worth playing, right? But to do that, we're going to kind of contrive a space that allows this experience to occur. So the guy you're left with, you're kind of invested in, right? At least psychologically. So, but you're also having a good time playing the funnel, right? So I wouldn't role play 6 characters in DCC for the funnel. And I know some guys are like, oh, it's fun. Dale, I remember Dale saying, dude, I had 4 characters. I had to role play all of them. Sure. If you want to split personality for an hour and a half, 3 hours, you want to split personality trying to be 4 different characters. More power to you, cowboy. I just want to go through the game process of the funnel and find out who survives, and then I'll worry about, how much I invest myself in the role playing that character. But there's no way I would try to split personality five fucking characters in the DCC funnel, especially when some of them are going to be dead and gone. Poof poof, right? So it shouldn't take long to wipe out a good portion of those extraneous characters, right? So anyway, fascinating conversation, and I do believe game's intent. If you want the game to be about narration, characterization, then you and a narrative and characterization, then the mechanics should be in support of narrative and characterization, because everything else is going to be mechanically part of a game in which we're going to attempt to win, or we're going to attempt to set ourselves up to be successful at, because nobody wants to play a game that they're always failing at. I find that the best stories come out of failure. Ironically, some of the most fun I've ever had in D&D sessions is complete failure creates anarchy, which is create the most memorable stories. Um, because rarely in D&D am I slaying the dragon. Super rare, right? Super rare for us to actually be badass enough that we go out, we actually strap on our shit like superheroes and say, we're gonna go slay us a dragon. Stop me, you know? Nah, it's pretty rare, right? Unlike Muhammad Ali measuring Joe Frazier saying, bring it on, Joe. I sting like a bee, I float like a butterfly, and all that shit. And he wasn't lying, right? So I don't know. But Muhammad Ali was a character and he was optimized and he knew he was fucking optimized. But in boxing history, there's one, Muhammad Ali, you know, and there have been mimics. There have been people came along and try to be like him. But what kind of character was he? Was that a show? Some of it was showmanship, but it was who he was. This is a man who chose not to go to Vietnam and was stripped of his heavyweight title for 4 years, was not allowed to fight for what he believed. That wasn't showmanship. That was character, you know. So how do you represent, that in D&D, right? I'll never forget Fallout 3. Again, sidetrack, but Fallout 3 for video game is my all-time favorite game. It was the first video game that I felt like was a role-playing game, but it took me a while. It took me a while to get into, but it engaged me early with the whole narrative process of growing up in the vault and then waking up. My father's run out of the vault, and I'm been kicked out of the vault by the nature of my father's actions. I've been run out of the vault, or I'll be killed. And then I'm faced with this: do I look for my father, or do I just go off into the wilderness and try to survive? So both things kind of happen. But what made Fallout 3, what was remarkable about Fallout 3, after I finished Fallout 3 and I started buying the expansions, and I will never forget the pit. For those who played Fallout 3 and got the pit, and you install the pit and you start to play the pit quest, quest line, the expansion module, and they take all your shit from you and they slam you in the pit in prison. And I remember at the time being so angry and I felt so oppressed because I was a badass. Fallout 3, after letting me build up this character, winning Fallout 3, undertaking some of the other modules, and I was just a badass. And then the pit, narratively, took all of my gear and ripped me down to my fucking skivvies and drops me in the pit, the prison. And I got to start playing from this completely oppressed, emasculated position. And I was emotionally in it, man. I was affected. I was pissed off. Fuck the pit. Why did I install this piece of shit? I've wrecked my character now. I got all lost on my shit. I can't explore the wasteland. I'm stuck in the pit. It worked. And how did they do it? They stripped me of all my shit. I was optimized, but I didn't have any of my shit that made me, right? So my character's stats and shit were optimized, but I had nothing. And again, right? I dare you in a D&D 5th edition session with your level 10s tonight or Friday night, put your characters in a position where they're stripped of all their shit and see how long that session goes and see how long you want to know if they're optimized as players or playing characters? Take their shit away from them and see if they're pissed off about it. Are they in character? Are they characters trapped on a desert island where all their shit was lost? And they got to play these level 10 characters with high attributes and skills and shit, but they ain't got all their weapons, they ain't got their magic items, they ain't got their, and see how long those motherfuckers, right, are characters, are if they want to be characters at all, right? And that'll tell you how the guys at your table are all about optimization of winning versus being characters in this situation. Fallout 3 taught that to me, right? I'm role playing. I'm this guy. I was Jesus of the wasteland. I saved everybody. I saved everything. My father at the end, embraced me and said, I saw everything you did, son. I'm proud of you. And it was moving. It was wonderful. Everything that I did in Fallout actually came back at the end. I got a slideshow of all the shit I did at the end. And I went, holy shit, Fallout 3 actually held me accountable for all the shit I would have done. Thank God I didn't blow up Megaton. And it was important to me. But then later in an expansion, the pit took all my shit from me. And suddenly I realized, holy shit, how much was I invested in my character? Or was I invested in being a badass? And well, turned out a little of both because I felt what happened to me when they stripped me of my shit. And that experience, as upsetting as it was, nailed Fallout 3 down for me as by far, for me, the greatest video game experience I've ever had and still have ever had and probably ever will have. Because now I'm 55 and most shit don't move me like that, right? But you get my point. So anyway, it's fascinating. So, all right, everybody, I'll shut up, let you go. Bye-bye.